Hi, and welcome back to the Doghouse podcast. I'm your host, Austin, joined by Connor, JJ, and Jimbo. Today we're pretending to be fans of not garbage teams, and we're looking towards the playoffs, and we're going to cover everything about this year's 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs. So I'm thinking we're going to start with just talking about which teams are we most surprised actually made it to the dance this year. Jimbo, you want to lead us off on that one?
Yeah, sure. The one I'm most surprised made it, it's got to be the Montreal Canadiens. You look at their roster, and yes, they made the playoffs last year. They managed to, do surprisingly well, but they're such a young team. I know, especially looking at the Canadian division, I definitely didn't have them as a pick to make it in. So, they've done all right. I think they're going to have a really difficult time against Toronto. A lot of people think that they're going to get swept, but you can never count this team out, and I think I've learned my lesson not to count them out in the regular season, at least.
Yeah, definitely 2 years in a row where Montreal was the worst team to make the playoffs once again. This year they're below two NHL teams for stats, and yet they still make the dance just because they played in the atrocious North Division, and Calgary really can't pull a win out of their butt if they wanted to. JJ, who are you most surprised by?
I'm most surprised by the Minnesota Wild. Lots of people would have had them in the playoffs, in the fourth position. For me, it's more just how convincingly they made it in. They were never in any doubt in the season, and I think they surprised a lot of people with just how well they've been playing. It looks like at the moment that they're going to play Vegas if the Colorado game ends. I believe it's 5-1 right now, so as long as that finishes the way it does. And, anything can happen there. They've been very surprising.
Yeah, definitely a big shock that Minnesota, not really adding a lot to their roster besides Kaprizov this season, but I guess that was really enough to shake things up for them. Connor, who do you got that's the most surprising?
See, I was thinking about Minnesota because Minnesota's been really, if you looked at this team going into the season, you looked at that center depth, you're like, this is not an NHL team and not one that can win the playoffs because Eriksson Ek is your top line center in Minnesota. But the team I'm most surprised about actually is the Nashville Predators. They somehow have worse center depth than Minnesota. Still made the playoffs, as well as the defensive depth is just absolute burning hot garbage, right? Like David Ference and Dante Fabro's your first pair. That is a third line. That's a third pairing on almost any other team. That is hot garbage.
I think that's because they have a lot of injuries right now and are resting players as well.
Yeah, but they made a late push to make the playoffs, which is even more surprising to me.
It was all in the back of Saros, right? The first half of the season, they weren't great, and then out of nowhere, Saros has been, unbelievable. 0.96 save percentage in the last second half of the season or something like that. He's really stood on his head.
I think that's the only reason why they made the playoffs, to be honest. Because they have Ryan Johansson followed by Rem Pitlick. That's their top two centers.
Is Duchesne playing on the wing then? Yeah. I don't even need to know. Oh gosh.
They got Duchesne on the right wing. Austin, who do you have for your most surprising, I should say?
This team made it a bit more, convincingly in the playoffs, but nonetheless, I am still shocked and appalled, and that is the Florida Panthers. Every year, at the start of the year, I go, yep, they're going to make it. This is the year, Florida. And then they suck, and they let me down. And so this year I went, they're not making it. I've given up on rooting for these guys, and they kept winning, and I'm like, oh, come on, surely a team with Bobrovsky this day and age can't make the playoffs. And here they are. Coach Quenneville really got to Huberdeau and Barkov. They were fantastic this year. Carter Verhaeghe was an insane ad. I think their new GM's really good with the analytics department, and that's why they kept finding these under-the-radar guys. And, a guy that a team gave up on too early, Sam Bennett came over, got 15 points in 10 games, beat Bure's record for most points in 10 games.
All right, bud.
Should have held on to him maybe, and they'd be in the playoffs, but, I'm very surprised they're making it to the dance.
Too early has been in the league for 6 to 7 years. Too early.
He beat a Bury record.
Could I?
Yeah, good for Sam Bennett. I'll give him that. But
is every episode just going to be the Sam Bennett special?
Potentially, but if you want to hear more about Sam Bennett, check out our second episode.
We're trying to get Sam Bennett on the show after 2 of the 4 members violently trashed him, just so they could fight it out on Zoom. What team are you most disappointed didn't make the playoffs, Jims? Which team did you look at and you thought these guys had a really strong chance and just completely fell out?
This one's a pretty easy one for me. It's got to be the Dallas Stars. We're going home. Like after making it to the Stanley Cup final last year, right? Like, I mean, and then you don't even make the playoffs this year, right? And pretty unbelievable. I know Pavelski he had such a good season this year. No one expected him at this age to be that good, but like no one else, showed up to the team. It looks like, they have a good roster. I know they're aging a little bit, but like when you make it to the Stanley Cup finals, you're almost like you're 100% expected to at least make it into the playoffs. Crazy.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think also COVID played a pretty big role into that. They got
not just
much roster
COVID.
decimated.
Well, it wasn't COVID too. They also had like lingering injuries from the end of the last playoffs, right? Like, how many
Bishop
games
played.
did Ben Bishop play or
I don't think
Sagan
he-
play this year?
I don't think Bishop
Not
played
much.
one.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
ask James.
like-
He held on to Sagan all season long in fantasy.
He did score in his first 2 games back.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think he played like 4 games.
That's pretty brutal. It's
3
pretty hard to
games,
make the
3
playoffs
games.
when your best guy isn't playing. At
That's
least your
true.
best guy offensively. JJ, who are you most surprised didn't make the playoffs?
I mean, I wanted to say Calgary, but after we just did that whole Philly episode, I'm going to say the Flyers. I mean, I don't know many people who predicted the Flyers not making the playoffs, and I know less people who had them predicted outside the top 2 spot in their division. I mean, pretty much everyone expected this team to go on and destroy everything in their path, and just the complete opposite happened goaltending wise for them. So that's the big shock for me. I mean, we just did an episode on why that happened, but it's still a shock.
Yeah, that one kind of hurt
Absolutely.
to watch. If only Carter Hart can, make a save. Connor, who are you most surprised by?
Man, I think the easy one would have been to be the Calgary Flames, but if you're a Flames fan, you already know that this disappointment is expected. So I can't really be too upset when this is kind of something you're already prepared for. So the team I'm most surprised that didn't make the playoffs is going to be the Blue Jackets. Not only did they do good and knock out the Leafs last year of the playoffs, which is a hell of a feat, they finished below Detroit.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
The Red Wings did better this year than Columbus, and that I know Tortorella lost the room, the team just gave up, but that is still mind-boggling. That team that was so good last year just couldn't do anything this year.
Yeah, kind of sad to see, but also, what a fall it was. For myself,
it was huge.
definitely. At the start of the season, I was most disappointed Vancouver didn't make it, just because it looked like they finally took the step last year. That great playoffs they had, but they just lost so many guys, key locker rooms, and then the whole COVID thing. But I think more recency bias affects me. I had a guy on this podcast sell me snake oil with the catchphrase, "We only have to be better than Minnesota," and that was the Arizona Coyotes. I thought they were going to make the playoffs, and then when Minnesota was good, they were better than St. Louis, and I was like, wow, they're really going to do it. And what a collapse it has been. That hurt to watch.
I wouldn't say collapse. I mean, Minnesota played good hockey this year. Arizona didn't. I mean, that's just how it goes.
The most
That
shocking
my
was just
catchphrase,
how
though.
Connor Garland put this team on his back and tried so hard to make this, and Jacob Chitrin, the two of them.
Oh, Chich,
Yeah.
he's a beauty. The most underrated
Dude.
defenseman in the league, in my opinion.
Dude had a Norris caliber season, in my opinion, and the team just shit the bed.
Like the catchphrase says, we just have to be better than Minnesota, and they weren't better than Minnesota.
And they weren't better than Minnesota.
Absolutely not. But I think this is a perfect time to segue into our next segment, which is we're actually going to start breaking down some of the playoff series. So, Austin, which series do you want to break down first?
I think we can go, on a little road trip, go west to east. Start with the number 1 team in the 4th seed in the West, which will now be Colorado, with the 2nd most amount of wins in their division against the St. Louis Blues.
Like, give that one a rest. Like, yeah, Vegas has
So
more wins, but like, come on, Colorado has way more
40
regulation
wins?
wins. Yeah,
40 wins?
39 wins.
All I'm gonna
It's
say,
not
40
that
wins.
big of a difference.
But Colorado going into the series, the record against St. Louis is 5-3. So they still have a winning record. They're the second worst team in their opponents. So everyone that Colorado played this year, they were positive against. But they're the second worst record was against the St. Louis Blues. Still 5-3 record in 8 games. They definitely were the better team. Who do you guys have taking the series and why?
I mean, it's going to be pretty tough to choose anyone but Colorado right now. Like, you look at this team head to toe and what they're capable of, and just what they've accomplished this year. It's tough to say that St. Louis, in the shape that they are in, can take a team like the Colorado Avalanche, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
agree.
for
I'm
sure.
gonna say Colorado as well. Um, just if you look at that team and just how they've been playing all year, they'll win a game 6-0, and you look at the scorecard, and each line has a point or two minimum. Like every line they have rolling does well. The only way I could see them losing is I had Grubauer in fantasy this year, so I just noticed that he would win games but wouldn't face that many shots just because Colorado was that much better than opponents. So the only way I could see the Blues really stealing this from them is just getting lots of shots on Grubauer that he might not have been used to this year, and then just being lucky from that. But yeah, I'm going to go with
Well,
Colorado as well.
and don't forget though, Binnington, we know he can steal series. So, I mean, although, yes, on paper, you got to think Colorado, just looking at the forwards. But then, if Binnington pulls something out and he stands on his heads, and if he could easily steal this series. I'm very unlikely, I think, with the skill of McKinnon, and then they got Makar on the back end, but never count him out. And then Blues are a physical team. Maybe they can
Mm.
beat him down, right? Like, and that's one factor. Although the skill is clearly favoring Colorado, when you get to playoffs, it's a whole different story, right? And at the end of the day, Colorado haven't really, they've done really well in the regular season the last couple of years, but they haven't gone super far in the playoffs. They've kind of gone midway through.
I think that's true, but I think they also faced some pretty tough opponents in the second rounds of the playoffs. Some teams that have been, especially like have tons of playoff experience. And Colorado, the last few years, has definitely got those experience now, so they should be able to do a lot better, in my opinion. But I was just looking at this team stats between Colorado and St. Louis. Colorado is in the top 5 for both goals per game and goals against per game, and then top 10 for power play percentage as well as penalty kill percentage. St. Louis only cracks the top 15 twice, goals per game, power play percentage. They're 26th against on the penalty kill. That's not going to cut it. If they take penalties, Colorado's going to take advantage.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado all around, they're a beast of a team. There's maybe one other team in the league that's as good as Colorado. There was a time I used to think that if there was a team that could beat Colorado, though, to upset them, it would be the St. Louis Blues. But ever since they lost Peter Angelo and Maroon, who wasn't a big contributor on the ice, it definitely felt like there was a shake in the locker room. And I know Ryan O'Reilly's the captain now, and he's a great guy, but I just don't think he has a grasp of that leadership yet fully in the locker room, the respect that Peter Angelo, who's been captain since Jesus was a child in St. Louis, had on that locker room. So it's definitely... Yeah, I just don't think this is their year for them. I think one more year, when Tarasenko calms down about not being named captain, maybe they can knock Colorado off, but I just don't think they have it this year. So I'm going to say, end of my prediction, Colorado in 6.
Colorado in 6.
I think I have to agree with that, actually. I'm going to say Colorado in 6 as well. I can see St. Louis stealing 2 games.
There we
Wow.
go. Yeah.
Jimbo, what you
Former
got?
Cup winners, not too far removed.
I probably got Colorado in 5. I think it's pretty clear that Colorado is the better team. I'm just very curious about Binnington if he can pull something out and stand on his head. What about you, Connor?
See, I'm also going to have to go Colorado in 5. I think 6 is giving the Blues a little bit too much credit, especially since the Colorado Avalanche are going to be getting back some key contributors. McKinnon, Bowen, Byram, they're all coming back before the playoffs start. So having those players back is definitely going to be what you need to win the series.
Would hate to give too much credit to a former Stanley Cup winner, St. Louis Blues.
I mean, how well have teams done in the playoffs after, 2 to 3 years after winning a playoff? Or winning it all?
Well, LA won 2 years after they won. Chicago won 2 years after they won twice. So, pretty good, honestly. The track record's pretty well if you can maintain it.
I mean, I will say this. LA had a franchise defenseman, and there was a franchise forward and winger and defenseman for the Blackhawks.
Well, I guess we'll have to see when the series starts. But hopping on to the next series, Vegas versus Minnesota. Who do you guys got, Jimbo?
It's got to be Vegas. I mean, they've been such a powerhouse ever since they entered the league. But to be honest, I know you guys were talking about Minnesota earlier as a big surprise they make the playoffs. I had no idea they were even in the playoffs a couple weeks ago. I completely forgot about them as a franchise, and I know that's kind of stereotypical. A lot of people do.
At least you're honest.
And so, Vegas though, with as long as they have both their goalies, all back and good. They're just too good of a team. We've talked about this before, how somehow they're so stacked and the cap just doesn't seem to impact them at all. Doesn't phase them. Vegas is one of my picks, I think, to go pretty far in the playoffs this year, as always. I think it's a pretty clear advantage to Vegas. What about you, JJ?
Sorry, I forgot to mention the record between the two teams. Vegas against Minnesota is 3-4. They're the only team they have a losing record against.
Wow.
Actually, Minnesota's is 5-1-2. So they've gone a point in 7 of the 8 games.
I mean,
just a bit interesting to have it.
That is incredible, but I'm just double checking my numbers here now just to make sure I'm right. I am. Marc-Andre Fleury, this was his best year save percentage wise.
He's had such a good year.
He's been so good, insane. And we're not even in the playoffs yet. And we know, especially with a goalie like him, there can be that other level at times. And I just think in the playoffs, with the quality of in front of him, he'll just be able to hit that other level, and they'll be unreal. I'm gonna underestimate Minnesota again, and I'm gonna say Vegas in 5. But you know what, Minnesota? Hopefully, I'm wrong again for your guys' sake. So we'll keep not believing in you for now.
Wow, really early there. Man, honestly, when I'm looking at this lineup and the matchups, you'd be a fool not to go and choose the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm a damn fool, so I'm gonna absolutely choose Minnesota. And this one's gonna
Talbot can carry them all the way, hey?
They're a hungry team. Kirill Kaprizov literally put this team on his back, and I understand how good Fleury has been, and but I feel like a lot of the numbers in this division, especially for the top teams, are very inflated against teams like San Jose, LA, that just getting blown out of the water, left, right, and center. So, but that being said, I really do think that Minnesota can actually beat the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm going to say Minnesota in 6.
Yeah, wow, okay.
I mean, when I'm looking at these two teams, there's no doubt about it, Vegas is the best team in the league right now. This team is so goddamn good with everybody they have. Everybody's clicking. Oh no, Fleury has a bad night, planer. Oh no, Peter Angelo's not doing good on that top pair, throwing Theodore, throwing White Cloud. They're just one of the best teams. But I am a North Stars jersey. I'm looking at the Minnesota lineup, and this is a mean lineup. And I know Vegas has Ryan Reeves, but he's a 4th liner. When you look at the Minnesota lineup, Jordan Greenway, 6'6", Eriksson Ek, 6'3", Foligno, 6'3", Brodin, 6'1", Bukestad, 6'6", Nico Strum 6'3", Carson Soucy 6'5", and they all like to hit, and they like to punish. And this team just finally they clicked. They're working in the locker room. I think they look at each other. They don't have to be the better team than Vegas. They just have to be the better team in 4 games. So I'm saying Minnesota in 7. That's my...
Vegas is also a pretty tough team. So this is going to be a hard-hitting series.
I think whoever comes out of this series is going to come out very beaten up, and the team they go up against is just going to kick some butt. So Connor has them in 6. I have them in 7. James, what do you have them in?
Vegas in sweep 4. I'm going to be bold.
Wow.
Wow.
I almost never predict sweeps. Good for you.
Connor, what's your prediction?
All right, like I said earlier, my prediction is going to be the Minnesota Wild in 6. I don't believe they're going to take it to the 7th game. Let's go Wild.
The disrespect James just put on this team is going to be played in the state of Minnesota.
Dude,
before every period, they're going to play it. They're going to be like, get a load of this wank saying that we won't even win 1, and they're going to win 4.
Look at this guy saying we don't even exist. He didn't even know we were a team, and now he's predicting a
Can't
sweep.
even pick Minnesota on a map.
I am far from the only one.
Dude, Cam Talbot revenge tour. Here we go, boys.
Hopping over to the Central, number 1 team in the Central, Carolina against Nashville. Jimbo, who you got here?
I feel like I'm just picking all the easy teams, but it has to be I feel like this one has to be Carolina. They're such a good team on so many levels, offense, defense, goaltending's been really hot of late. They got a lot of young guys, but they've just been tearing it up, right? Top team in the division. They've just really been on fire, and they've just got so many good pieces. If they lose this series, it's going to be an absolute upset. Especially Nashville. That's a team I didn't even think was going to be in the playoffs this year. As we kind of mentioned before. But Saros has really, been a key factor here. And so Carolina, they're a very offensive-driven team, and Nashville very defensive. So if Carolina can get rid of Saros, it's going to be no challenge for them. So I'm going to say Carolina in 5.
Bold. Jonathan?
I'm going to say Carolina as well. I watched the playoffs of last year a lot against the Predators when my Coyotes were playing them. And the Coyotes beat them then. I think if the Coyotes can beat you, last year, and I haven't seen much improvement out of the Predators this year, I would say they've gone worse. I'd say it's going to be no problem for the Hurricanes. I'm going to say Hurricanes in 4.
Wow.
Bold. Connor.
A sweep. You're predicting a sweep.
I am predicting James gave me courage, and now I'm predicting a sweep.
Wow. That is bold.
I'll just say something. I just want to add on to something I said before. So Carolina, they are top 5 in goals allowed. So, their goaltending has been great. Nashville, they've been bottom 10 in scoring this season. So they're having a lot of trouble scoring. So I can really see them having a difficult time here.
I mean, yeah. Dougie Hamilton is just too beautiful to lose a playoff game. So
contract year 2.
Contract year 2, that always helps.
Do they still do the what's the thing Carolina does after
the
they
storm
win the
surge?
Game?
I don't think
they
did
still
it this
doing
year.
that. No, they don't do it.
Oh, thank God.
Well, who would they do it for?
They got fans.
Because no one's there.
Yeah, they probably got fans. It's the States,
I guess now,
right? So
but yeah.
They started in the playoffs.
Can you imagine if they did that with no one in the crowd? The reaction.
I think it's just important information to also point out. Carolina beat the Nashville Predators 6-2 this year, while the Preds were 2-5-1 against the Hurricanes here. But what's also very interesting is of the last 5 games played, Nashville has won 4 of them, including the last 2 games of the season, which were both against the Hurricanes, including a 5-0 shutout.
They already were in it. They were resting. Doesn't change my opinion.
So, Connor, who do you have then?
It's got to be Carolina. Like I said earlier in the episode, I'm surprised Nashville even made the playoffs. This team, looks like hot garbage. It literally looks like an AHL team that got incredibly lucky and just made that playoffs with like a few NHLers sprinkled in, and an incredibly hot goaltender down the line. That being said, I'm also going to go with JJ. Sweep Carolina Hurricanes.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
I just looking at their scoring. Their top scoring player is Roman Josi with 33 points in 48 games, and he's a defenseman.
Yep.
That's
33
pretty
of those are
bad.
assists. The top of
Yeah,
the goal
8 of 20.
scorer
Yeah.
has 13 goals.
Wow. How did they make the playoffs? Like, I don't understand.
Because everyone else
Because
sucked
of
in that
Saros. It's 'cause of
division
Saros, man.
too.
Like, it's all the goalie.
I'm going to keep
Wow.
this very simple. You could put George Vezina in for Nashville, and I still have Carolina winning it in 3. Like, this
In
is going to be...
3?
Yeah, like, honestly, they're going to score so much, it's over.
They resigned before the
Nashville
last
should
game.
not be in the playoffs. This is actually a travesty.
This is going to be so embarrassing when they win the playoffs.
They're going to win the cup.
Literally all of us like, this team's bad. This team sucks. This team's not going to even be like have a goal. They're not going to lead.
I would be okay if I'm embarrassed on this, because that would mean some miraculous collapse happened.
Man, I'm going to actually make a bold prediction for this series and say Nashville will never hold the lead.
Wow.
Okay, I don't know about that, but good
I'm
luck.
not going to say
Yeah,
that.
I
I'm
don't
not
know
going to
about
say
that.
that.
I'm going to say
I
there's
don't
2
see it.
shutouts by Carolina. I'm going to double down.
Ooh.
There we
Wow.
go. Florida,
Panthers
Tampa.
fans are going to be mad.
What fans? That one guy in Edmonton?
Jimbo, who do you
trash
got
talk
for Florida and Tampa?
Florida, Tampa. This one's an interesting one, actually. This is going to be a really good matchup to watch because obviously you have the defending champ. So a lot of people are, easily going to go to Tampa. I'm really torn on this one. I think this one's going to be a game 7. This is definitely one I can see. I'm going to have to give it to Tampa Bay because I just don't trust Bobrovsky. Like, he's been winning games this season, but like his save percentage hasn't been the best. And then with Kucherov and Stamkos expect to be back for game 1 of the series. I expect them to come out on fire. I don't think they're gonna have any issues warming up or anything. So I'm gonna have to give it to Tampa in 7. I think it's gonna, but I really think this one is gonna be a toss up. Both teams have been great. They're both great teams. A really good teams going out in round 1 here.
You think they're going to
Oh,
start
absolutely.
Bobrovsky over Chris Driedger?
I mean, yeah, Drager has been the guy, but he's a pretty young guy, right? Like, so his playoff experience.
He has played
is
less
probably
games.
But like, has Drider even played any playoffs before? Like, would this be his?
I don't think so.
No, he's played 38 NHLs also.
And I know that's not really much of a stat or something to go by because how many times have we seen a young goalie that's never played in the playoffs before go ahead and like light it up, be lights out and win the Stanley Cup. So I still think Vasilevsky is just that much of a factor here that he's going to give Florida a hard enough time to win the series. But I think at the end of the day they're both great teams and it's going to come down to a battle of the goalies.
That's a fair assumption, honestly.
That is, yeah.
That is so fair.
And you said you had Tampa Bay winning it in 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, who do you have, Austin?
This is a hard one because the Florida Panthers are definitely the more physical team. They like to hit more, and obviously we saw that with Dallas and Tampa in the playoffs last year. In Tampa, single-handedly whooped them. But I think Florida's a way better skilled team than Dallas was. Like, their top is really good. They beat Tampa Bay 5 times this year, lost twice. They did pretty good against Tampa. Like, this is, like James said, we're gonna see a good team, get knocked out. Tampa Bay has the more steady goaltending in Vasilevsky, but that's all they have. Whereas you look at, Florida, they have Bobrovsky, who's been a playoff wizard in Columbus before. They have Chris Driedger, who has a .927 this season, and Spencer Knight has a .919. I know he's a rookie, but having that depth is pretty great. But then on the other hand, you have a guy like Adam Lomberg who played 34 games this year, and any team that has Adam Lomberg play more than 5 is not a good hockey team. So I think I'm going to go with Florida in 7, simply because they have Calgary Flames legend Sam Bennett. Playoff Sam Bennett, who I told is as good as Wayne Gretzky. So I'm going to go Florida in 7.
Playoff legend.
Gage, who do you got?
I'm gonna go with Tampa in 6, but it's gonna be like closer than 6 makes it sound. I believe it will be like a really close game / an overtime that's gonna be the difference. I have to agree with James though. I think it's gonna be a goaltending battle. I had Vasilevsky in my fantasy pool this year, and there was pretty much one time I was worried about him losing a game badly. Every other time I was like, he's got this, and if not, whatever. I just think he's on another level, and when you have Stamkos and Kucherov coming back, it only gets better for them. So I'm going to say Tampa in 6.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I was just about to mention that the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be getting Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman, and McDonough. They're all should be back, including Barclay Goodrow and Andre Palat as well. That are all going to be back before the playoffs start.
And that team is just unreal. So, I mean, look where they finished without Kucherov playing this entire year.
Yeah, that's fair. Personally, I'm going to take it a completely different way. I think it's going to be Florida in 5 games. I don't think it's going to go to 6.
Wow.
And the reason why I'm going with Florida in 5 games as opposed to Tampa Bay is Florida has such great depth, just like Tampa, down the lineup, in terms of defense, in terms of offense, all the way down the lineup. I think if they play Chris Driedger, for sure, that's going to put a huge wrench into Tampa Bay's plans, and that's going to really swing the series one way or another. But playoff Sam Bennett with Jonathan Huberdeau, oh my god, name a better pair meant for the playoffs. I think that's going to be incredibly tough to defeat, and honestly, I think Kucherov and Stamkos missing so much time is going to really hinder their performance early on, and that momentum's just going to carry Florida right through.
I agree, like they have a very good forward depth, but on the back end, not so much. I mean, they were kind of mid-tier, 13th for goals against. You kind of look, obviously, Ekblad, their captain's out. I don't know. That's a bit of a concern for me, looking at their defense, but that's just me.
Uyghur's had a really good year, though, this year. I had him in fantasy. He was, points-wise, was incredible, and was playing well defensively. But yeah, you're missing Ekblad as well. That's huge.
You're missing Ekblad, but they're a physical and defensive-minded back end. Brandon Montour, Keith Yandel, Radko Gudas. It's not bad by any stretch of the word. And I don't think Stamkos or Kucherov are going to be able to come in and produce at the same level right away.
Well, maybe they'll just take out Stamkos in period 1 of game 1. Dude's made of glass, right? Like, you send out Gudas on the same line, big hit into the boards, man's done for the season.
I mean, didn't these two teams recently just get into a line brawl?
Yeah, Montour was at the center of it. He can be a chippy player, so I think that'll be good for the playoffs. But saying the word Montour and defense in the first sentence is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. But Florida for sure does have a good back end, but they are going to hurt without Ekblad.
If you ever need proof that Flames fans overvalue their prospects, even after they've been traded, Sam Bennett was brought up more times than Braden Point.
I don't think Braden Point was even brought up once.
I don't think Barkov was either.
Yeah. We didn't really bring up a lot of guys, but I just want to see Sam Bennett happy.
I don't know. Braden Point, Stamkos, that's too good. That's too good to underestimate.
Yeah, but Barkov and Huberdeau.
I don't know.
Hopping over to the East Division to finish off our American road trip. Pittsburgh against the New York Islanders. Who you got, Jimbo?
Yeah, this one actually is going to be another very interesting one because you have Pittsburgh, who's really been clicking of late. Like they're really hot right now. Second in goals for. Like they've been really lighting it up on the front end. But then Islanders, on the other hand, are actually the complete opposite. They've been really solid defensively this year. I think they're third in goals against. So you have one of the top teams for goals for, one of the top teams for goals against. it's just going to be a very interesting matchup. But like one of the biggest things for me is that the Islanders haven't been the best kind of the last couple weeks here. They haven't really finished the season on a high, whereas Pittsburgh has. And I'm not sure if the Islanders will be able to, stop that. And if they can, they're going to be great. But I think I'm going to have to give this one to the Pens, even though, again, I think this is going to be another close one. This could be a game 7. So I'm going to say Pens in 7. And you know what? I at the end of the day, like the biggest thing I think for the Islanders is they're going to have to increase their scoring somehow. And Palmieri's got to come in. He's got to do something. I think he's going to be a major factor. Obviously, they gave up a first round pick for him from New Jersey, and he really has to come in and just be a force on the front end. But I'm just going to give it to Pittsburgh. I think they're too hot coming into this series.
Yeah, momentum's a big thing. I mean, think about almost every playoff series, except for last year, that where if you went in hot, you just carry that in. Easy first round matchup win.
And who expected Pittsburgh to win the division this year? I know I didn't.
Nobody.
And then
Not really nobody.
Yeah.
I had them 5th, to be honest. I thought they were just out and Philly was in.
I thought their window closed. I didn't have either Pittsburgh or the Islanders making the playoffs this year. Whoopsie doopsie.
But you also had the Sabres making the playoffs, to be fair, though.
Oof. You get an F in the chat for that one? Yikes.
Jonathan, who do you got winning this series?
You know what? I'm going to have to say the same thing as James. I'm going to say Pittsburgh in 7. I wouldn't be surprised if it went Islanders in 7 or even 6. I mean, I just think this is going to be, after watching the first couple minutes of the game, we're going to go, okay, this is how they've shown up for the playoffs. I think we'll be able to tell from there. I just think it's too hard to pick a team that doesn't have Crosby on it, because every year there's just that thought in the back of your head going, oh, but they have Crosby, so anything's possible. So, yeah, I just think we're going to see some magic from Sid the Kid, always young at heart, and he's going to win another cup. So I'm going to say Penguins in 7 again.
All right. I mean, that's a lot of information. I can't say I disagree. Connor, who do you got?
I'm in the same mindset. Sidney Crosby is a fucking marvel in the NHL. To me, he's the best player to ever play the game. Fact. But that also being said, the Islanders are a really strong defensive-minded team. Like, they can shut down a game and just sit and just basically strangle the life out of a team. And that's what playoff hockey really is. But then again, best player to ever play the game is playing against them. Honestly, I'd go Pittsburgh in 5. Just with the way the Penguins have been playing this year, as well as how healthy their team is going in. They'll have Malkin, they'll have Crosby. Letang is available for the entire playoffs. And Varlamov is potentially injured or just coming back off an injury going into the playoffs. For me, if they don't have Varlamov playing game 1, they've lost that series. And if he misses any time, they've lost that series, because Pittsburgh is just so goddamn good, and Crosby wants another ring. And he's going to get another ring. Wow. Is it too far-fetched to say Sidney Crosby finishes his career with 4 rings? I don't think so.
I wouldn't say too far-fetched, but doesn't mean it's easy.
I think of Brian Burke on the K-Styles president, man. Anything's possible.
Yeah, true.
Dude,
exactly.
This man will drag Pittsburgh into the playoffs, whether they like it or not.
You're going to see Crosby throwing hits every play now that Brian Burke's there.
Yeah, Austin, how about you? Who do you got?
You know, I said it on our deadline video, and you guys all laughed that the Palmieri trade was bad, and he has not fit into that dressing room one bit. He hasn't been putting up the numbers. He can't score. I think the Islanders are almost having a crisis now that Anders Lee is hurt, and it's very clear Palmieri is not Anders Lee. However, you know, I've watched, you know, obviously a Sabres fan, I watched the East Division a lot, and the amount of times I watched a Buffalo Islanders game where the Islanders score in the first 5 minutes and they will just play like it's the last 3 minutes for the rest of the game. It's going to be a really grueling season, but this is just turning into the Sidney Crosby corner. Sidney Crosby's the best that's ever played. I know a lot of Sabres fans don't like him, but I'm a Canadian first. I got to respect what he's done for the game, what he's done for the Penguins. And if you guys look at the numbers, these numbers are very similar to their last Cup win. They had a change in management. The last Cup win, they changed coaches halfway through the season. This year, it was bringing in Hextall. They brought in a guy from the Toronto Maple Leafs. That time it was Phil Kessel. This time it was Kapanen. They both did very good near the end of the season. Their third line, once again, is gelling. I just think this Pittsburgh team is built to make a Cup win again. And another thing about the Pittsburgh Penguins is every time they won a Cup, they were never the favorites. We're all yeah, they're a good team, but we just never go. They're the best. So I am building up all that to say Pittsburgh in 5.
I was waiting for Islanders in 5. Yeah,
yeah. Pittsburgh in 5. No chance.
I think we all missed the idea of course the Paul Mary trade wasn't going to work. A guy from New Jersey going to New York, that doesn't mesh.
Doesn't. Well, that's the Coyote curse. I saw it all the time where Arizona would trade for this sniper. And it's that's not how the team plays. Of course they don't play well. And I'm amazed GMs are always surprised by this when they play this completely defensive game. Then the GM trades for snipers and it doesn't work out. I'm we've seen this a million times. It doesn't work.
Yeah. The Pittsburgh Penguins are doing a miracle in that they got Cody Ceci to learn how to play hockey. And he's been actually one of their better defensemen there. And they have penalty-killing legend Mark Jankowski on this team, so I would love to see him win a Cup.
I forgot about him.
Django's going to win. I mean, he was the first guy to score this year, so he was the leading scorer in the NHL
a couple goals
at
or
one
something?
point in his career.
Yeah, he got multiple goals or something dumb like that.
He's pretty good. He might lift the Cup.
He's hot garbage. But all I'm going to say is, do you think Leafs fans will shoot themselves if Cody Ceci wins a Cup?
I think anyone who has respect for the game will. I'll actually break me with Cody Ceci. It's a Stanley Cup. Dude, he is so bad.
You just every fan base today. You're oh, those players on their team sucks. Terrible.
Oh, we're going to make a lot of enemies.
We'll agree.
Austin's going to make a lot of enemies.
Pens fans know that Crosby's numero uno and Cody Ceci is a pylon, and that's just how it is.
I think Toronto will be too focused on whether they got past the first or second round than caring about any other ex-Leaf this year, because that seems to be the death for them every year.
And now we're looking to the next series, Washington-Boston. Jimbo, who you got here?
Yeah, no, this is going to be a very good series. This is obviously going to be a big battle. A lot of big teams here. Very mean teams. So this is going to be a very entertaining one to watch. And not to mention, you have Chara on the Washington Capitals facing his old team, right? Isn't that super weird? So this is definitely going to be one of the more interesting ones. I think for me, kind of the key players that go into it, it's got to be Taylor Hall. Right, he had points in 11 of 16 games with Boston. Right, so such a season turnaround, compared to his time in Buffalo this year. So if Boston can keep things rolling with their perfection line, Brad Marchand's been excellent as always, and he's been super hot coming into the playoffs, and we know what a playoff dominator he is. You get Taylor Hall lighting it up too. I've got to give it to Boston. And one of the biggest question marks I have around Washington is their goaltending. You have those two younger goalies. They've been all right at times, but they've also been not great in certain games too. So it's almost a bit of a toss up. So I'm a little unsure about the back end there at Washington. So I'm gonna give it, and not to mention I'm dying to see Boston knock out Toronto again. So in order for that to happen, they're gonna have to make it past round 1 and 2. So I just have to give it to Boston. I'd love to see it. So I'm gonna say Boston in let's do 5. Boston in 5.
Wow. Okay.
Also, to keep in mind, a lot of people are talking about Taylor Hall's points since getting to Boston because that's the flashy acquisition. But ever since Taylor Hall's been playing with Krejci, I think Krejci has 16 points in 7 games or something stupid like that. So
he's turned it on.
They're definitely they now have two good lines, two amazing lines in Boston. And I'm going to hand that over to Jonathan James.
It's no secret I'm not a fan of the Boston Bruins. Maybe that's just because of how good they are every year, but this team is built for the playoffs.
They're built
Every
different.
year, they are a good team. Even if they're not as great in the regular season and still slip it in, they always make a run. And if they don't, the team that beat them had a hard time doing it. I'm going to say Boston in 6. I know Washington's an amazing team, but in the playoffs, it's Bruins hockey.
Yeah, Bruins hockey is a
Bold
staple
take.
for it is
Connor, who you got?
what is needed. I mean, playoff hockey is definitely a Bruins kind of thing. They're built for that. That's how they're meant to do. But I mean, when you look at the two teams, right? Like the Bruins had Brad Marchand basically carry them into the playoffs. Like, sure, they have Pasta and Bergeron, they're doing good, but just the depth of the Washington Capitals is pretty tough to beat, to be honest. Like, Alex Ovechkin's a god for goal scoring. We all know that, right? Backstrom's great, TJ Oshie. The goaltending's a concern, but Boston lost one of the best pieces for playoff hockey, Zdeno Chara. And Zdeno Chara, and with how much of a goon squad the Washington Capitals are with Tom Wilson, Garnett Hathaway, and then I think it's Orlov on the back end, they are going to mess up the Bruins. Yeah, like they're definitely built to beat up on any team they face, and the Bruins are going to experience firsthand what it's like to be on the receiving end of a more physical team. So I'm going to go Capitals in 6.
I mean, I tend to agree with you there, Connor. The Washington Capitals are the most physical team in hockey this year. You know, Tom Wilson, Ovechkin, Orlov, Hathaway, Dowd. Like, you got all these guys who are monsters. And, you know, like, we're talking about other teams that have tough guys. Like, most Minnesota guys are tough. But, like, Tom Wilson's a monster. Like, he's not going to put up with the rat stuff Marchand does. He took a guy's head off in a preseason game. This dude's a certified criminal. And it's kind of sad that he's such a goon, too, because he, low-key, had his best point season. He had 33 points in 47 games. He was on pace for 22 goals. Like, he is a skilled guy, too. And that's the other thing. They're not just tough, they're skilled. You know, Ovechkin, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Wilson, Mantha. Big acquisitions, right? They have all these guys who can put the puck in the net. Boston, though, you know, they have such a good culture in that dressing room. They know what it takes to win. They have Pasternak, who I think is the greatest goal scorer in the league right now. This is going to be the series to watch. Like, it's really going to be violent. It's going to be fast. It's going to be skilled. This is what old-time hockey is supposed to be like. It's almost like watching an old 50s series, you know, with Gordie Howe and whatnot. Just all these tough, skilled scoring guys. I'm going to say Capitals in 7, but it's going to be... This is one where I can see, you know, going in the third period of Game 7, it can go either way.
Yeah, this is one to watch for sure.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the best series that you can load up and watch. But did you say Past is the best goal scorer in the league? He's not even the best goal scorer on their team. Marchand.
Pasternak is the best goal scorer.
In the league?
No.
He had a rough year this year. Pasternak is the most talented goal scorer in the league. I will die on this.
Austin Matthews who?
Yeah. Like,
I will die on this.
I do not like the Leafs, but dude, Austin Matthews is so good for goals. What are you on about?
Check your facts. But...
And speaking of Austin Matthews, we are now going to God's team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, against Montreal Canadiens. Jimbo, who do you have taken the series of the original 6 teams?
So I think a lot of people like this one. You know, there's a lot of nostalgia around this one. You know, just the fact that you have, like you said, you know, some initial 6 teams playing. You got the Canadiens and the Leafs, right? It doesn't really get any more Canadian than this. Unfortunately, you know, Montreal is kind of a faker when it comes to the postseason here, right? I mean, such low amount of points. Like, obviously they managed to squeak their way in, but if they were in any other division, I fail to see that they would have made the playoffs. And there's such a big contrast here, as well as potential concerns around Carey Price. He's kind of been in and out this year. He hasn't been at his top of his game the last couple of years. I think I'd be silly not to give this one to Toronto. And I know that's what everyone's saying. I'd absolutely love to see Montreal take this. I think it'd be hilarious, and I think it would just be such a great story. Like, this would, if any of the series are going to be just like surprises for upsets, this is the one. If the Canadiens beat Toronto, this would be the biggest upset of the playoffs, in my opinion. But yeah, I think, obviously Montreal's still quite young. So I think this will be more of a learning year again, kind of like last year. But who knows, I think Montreal is a team that's very easy to brush aside, especially when they're playing, God's team and Austin Matthews. But yeah, I've got to give it to them. The only thing that I can think of that might hurt Toronto is their goaltending, right? Like, maybe there could be some unknowns, but Campbell's been so good. And I just think even if they have iffy goaltending, they have the front end to just blow past Montreal, even if they're letting in goals. So got to give it to, let's say, Toronto in... I'll give Montreal one win. So Toronto in 5.
Wow.
I was going to say sweet, but I changed my mind.
Keep in mind, if Campbell doesn't do good, former Calgary Flame, David Riddick.
No, and I think Anderson's back now. He's been playing, so I think he'd be number 1 or 2, depending.
I saw maybe one post when Riddick did the bat flip when he won the shootout with Calgary. If he does that to beat Montreal, you best believe we'll see 300 posts about it. They might actually fly out Bautista so he can meet Riddick just for that moment.
Reenact.
Jage, who you got in this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a more one-sided one, so it definitely would be a big upset if Montreal were to win. It's the same thing as what James was saying. Goaltending-wise, that might be the only thing that helps Montreal out. If Carey Price can turn it on and play the best that he can. I mean, goalies have stolen playoff series before. Who better than Carey Price? And especially with Toronto's who should play in net. Campbell's playing well right now. Is he going to play well in the playoffs? How about Freddie Anderson? That could be the one thing, but I'm going to say Toronto in 6 because I just think Montreal is going to play a bit better than we expect them to, but I don't think they'll win.
Wow. Connor?
Man, when you think about this series and you get to think about Montreal versus Toronto, it's just so heavily one-sided towards the Leafs. But then again, how many times have the Leafs gone into a playoff series and expected to win and then just lost it?
That's what I'm scared about. That's why I said 6.
Right? Like, how many game 7s do I have to go to before they learn their lesson? Too many to count. Also, by the way, boys, happy anniversary to the 2013 Boston Game 7 against the Leafs. I love them, Leafs fans. But, I mean, when you look at the two teams, the Leafs are coming in completely healthy. Weber, Price are coming off of injury. Toffoli, Petrie, Drouin, Anderson, Gallagher, they're all coming off of injury going into this playoff series. That being the case, right, part of me wants to just say Montreal in 7 just for the memes. But I can't. I'm actually going to say Leafs in 4. Montreal has lost 5 in a row going into this, and the Leafs are starting to ramp up. Montreal's not going to win a game.
Yeah, they have been brutal going into the final couple of weeks of the season, you're right. The final month of the season.
Bad. Yeah. I mean, think about it. The Calgary Flames could have been eliminated 2-3 weeks ago, and they were eliminated just 2 days ago. And Montreal only needed 1 point to do that. That's brutal.
That is brutal.
That being said, Austin, who you got?
I can definitely go back and forth and talk about, the Toronto improved defense with TJ Brody and Muzzin. And I can talk about, Montreal's young, hungry core of Romanov and Cole Caulfield, one of the future greatest goal scorers of all time. but I think with an easy story, I'll explain my pick. Every year, James and I make a bet on the Toronto Maple Leafs. I always bet that Toronto will win in the first round.
No. It's not just the first round. It's only when they're playing Boston, too, because they always happen to play them in round 1.
Every year I buy James lunch, but this year he does not want to take up the bet again.
No, I'm taking... The bet is not necessarily... It's not defined by round 1. It's defined by playing Boston. So
James, when you said... James, if you said not... The moment you said not round 1, I was like, that was a sign from God. Toronto's winning. God picked his hockey team. Yeah, I could feel the fear. So I'm going to put my money on Toronto. They're going to beat Montreal, and then they're going to lose in the final to Boston, and I'm not going to get a free lunch again.
Oh, if they win the cup, I'm deleting all TSN, Sportsnet, everything. I'm throwing my phone in a river, just living in the mountains all summer.
But,
dude,
I do want to credit.
You'll never hear that.
Toronto, if Toronto doesn't sweep the series, I can see Montreal with their young guys sweeping it. I can see Suzuki, Caulfield, and Romanoff really making a push.
Sweeping it.
You think Montreal could sweep?
It's a sweep either way. Whoever wins the first game wins the series. That's where my money's going.
Wow.
And with the last series of the
day, sweep.
The Edmonton Oilers against the Winnipeg Jets, Battle of the Prairies. Who you got, Jimbo?
Yeah, this one's actually a really interesting one because here you have two teams with, not the best defensive core. So at least they're very similarly matched up, actually. Obviously they have hot players on the offense and on the defense, a little unknown. And then one of the biggest, obviously, differences is the goaltending. Now, typically one would say, Jets have a lot stronger advantage in this case, but Hellebuck hasn't. I'm not done. Hellebuck hasn't been great against the Oilers this year, and Smith has been really good. It's still he has been really good this season, which is very unexpected, and there's still a lot of question marks going to the playoffs. But if he can continue his form, he is going to give Jets a hard time, and the Jets just. If you had asked me a month ago, I would have 100% said that Jets were a better team than Toronto Maple Leafs. If there's one team in the Canadian division that's more likely to win the Stanley Cup, I would say Jets over Leafs. But the last month has been very brutal for the Jets, and I know they've been dealing with some injuries. They just haven't been good, though. And I honestly, as much as I think, Edmonton doesn't have the depth to go all the way, I think just McDavid and Draisaitl will completely overpower this team because they're just going in on a low. And I think McDavid, it'll just be a McDavid smoke show. He's just been kind of unstoppable, especially against the Jets this year. So I'm going to say Edmonton I'll get Edmonton in 6. But I'll say that the games Edmonton wins are going to be pretty blowout.
Wow. Okay. Jage.
I have really been struggling with this one for a long time because I just think the Jets are so good at what they do, but just recently they haven't been themselves. Everything's been out of place. But I think the biggest factor in this series is what Mike Smith are we getting? Are 100%. we getting the Calgary Flames playoff series where Mike Smith was standing on his head against Colorado and the only guy playing? Or are we getting Mike Smith that we've seen almost every regular season where he just falls apart at some point? Or even Edmonton's last playoff against Chicago? Depending on Mike Smith, I think that will determine the series. But it's going to be so hard to say. I'm just going to go with Winnipeg still. I just think Chicago shut down Draisaitl and McDavid. I believe if they could do it while all the games are at Edmonton, then Winnipeg can do it when only half the games are in Edmonton. So I'm going to say Winnipeg in 7.
Wow.
Going against my guy, it hurts, but...
Oof. You had it.
Let it be known, when Mike Smith needed JJ Mouse, he wasn't there.
No, I'll still watch on and cheer him on, but not the team that's playing in front of him.
Jade, your girlfriend's family have much influence on that pick?
All the influence. They're actually just standing an inch to the left with a gun, so I had to predict Winnipeg.
Oh my
God. Connor, who you got for this one?
Oh, man, I mean, you look at the two teams going in, right? You got Edmonton, you got Winnipeg. They didn't finish too far off. Well, I say that Edmonton had 11 more points than the Jets. The Jets are getting Ehlers back, and Edmonton has a few injuries. But Connor McDavid in the playoffs with Draisaitl in the playoffs is a deadly combo. We saw it a couple of years ago. They are really good in the playoffs. Like, absolutely dominant in the playoffs. And honestly, with the way Mike Smith's been playing this year and how Mike Smith plays in the playoffs, right? Playoff Mike Smith is consistently great. I don't think Winnipeg can win a single game.
Wow, really?
I'm going Edmonton sweep. And I'm a Flames fan, and that kills me to say it. But this team is too powerful if they have amazing goaltending and McDavid's hot, which he's been absolutely rolling going into the playoffs. Winnipeg doesn't have a chance. Like, they're going to get steamrolled. It's not even going to be close.
Hearing all these positive comments about Mike Smith is finally making me happy.
Man, he wasn't an issue.
I'm not putting any faith into Mike Smith. I'm solely putting faith into the forward cores of the Edmonton Oilers. When I look at these two teams, I think there's a big cultural difference, and that's what's going to decide the winner. You look at the Winnipeg Jets, they backtalk their coach in the media. You got Scheifele and Wheeler coming out going, all I care about is winning. I will do anything to win, and whoever's not on board can get off. And then they, don't back check, and they just go off on early shifts. And you look at the Oilers, and they don't say anything in the media. They're very quiet. They just come and they perform. Like, you can tell this team, when they watch Connor McDavid play, they're like, wow, this is another type of athlete, and we need to perform for him. I think everyone in Edmonton's bought into a Tippett system, and they bought into McDavid. And they've had some really lucky bounce back from guys like Puljujärvi's become an elite forechecker, which every good playoff team needs. And just like how Colorado had Cale Makar come in after college to be a great playoff performer, I think Edmonton's going to get that in Dylan Holloway. He's going to come in, he's going to be amazing for them. So I have Edmonton winning in 5. I think Hellebuck's going to steal a game, but I just don't see, Winnipeg matching up in any regard to Edmonton.
Austin, you really are the kryptonite to Jets fans, man. You're going to hear about that.
I know.
Some of them comments are pretty, yikes.
This nice
At this
fan
point,
base.
I just got to rock the heel.
Nice team, nice fan base. Austin just hates them.
Yeah, it's a great team, great fan base, great bunch of guys.
I mean, I got nothing against them, but I mean, you saw how much they struggled against the Flames last year. Do you really think they could go up against a team like Edmonton?
Took out freaking Scheifele, didn't he?
Murdered and assassinated Scheifele in the middle of the ice.
The Jets, to me, have been playing like they want their coach fired, and I think the playoffs are going to be the nail in that coffin. I think they're going to lose to Edmonton, and Paul Maurice is going to be gone. Justified or not, I think that's what's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely not justified.
But, just seeing the comments they make, the back talk they give to their coach in this time of the season when you're trying to be ramping up for the playoffs, I was actually almost insulted about what Scheifele said about Paul Maurice. Say? So there was the play where Scheifele changed instead of back checking and he got benched for the third.
Right, I heard about the benching. He came out and
he was like, I don't agree with the benching. The team's better when I'm on the ice. I wouldn't have done that. That wasn't the right decision to make. And I'm like, that's not what you say in that situation. I think you just got to take it and learn from the situation. And it's just things like that I'm just like, wow, you don't say that to Paul Maurice. So I think there's a friction in this locker room. It's been talked about before after the Calgary playoffs, and I think it's going to explode this season.
Well, I mean, think about it. Like, you have Paul Maurice, who has openly defended players, and he's very vocal about being for his players and making sure they're doing what is right. And the whole Lonnie getting traded out and all the rumors about some of the Jets players, and then you see comments like this. I'm not sure if Paul Maurice is the issue here. I think maybe there's an issue with guys like Scheifele and their character. Because if you're complaining about your coach who pulled you and sat you on the bench because you weren't skating hard, I'm sorry, bud. That's on you. Fucking pick up the pace, bud.
But it's harder to change your core than it is to fire a coach. I mean, look at Calgary, right? When Bob Hartley benched Gaudreau and Monahan, they didn't trade Monahan and Gaudreau, they fired Hartley.
Yeah, and how has the Flames done since?
And how's Hartley done since?
Yeah, exactly.
KHL champ.
He's a champion.
Champ in KHL. Alrighty, yeah. So once we finish the every round, there was a lot of disagreements. There was a lot of points we agreed on. So I want to hear from you boys. Who do you got to represent each division in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Jimbo, who do you got representing each div?
Ooh, man, this is such a tough one.
This
For
is
reasons I kind of explained earlier, I think they're a team that has a proven playoff built, and I do want to see them take on Toronto and beat them in the playoffs. In the Mass Mutual East, I'm going to give it to Boston. I'm going to say they're going to take that guy. I think it's going to be between them and Pittsburgh, based on my predictions. But yeah, I'm going to say Boston. I think they're a great team. If Rask can stay playing the way he is, in his form he is currently in, I think that's a very good possibility. Scotia North, going to have to give it Toronto. Same reason. I want to see Boston playing Toronto. I think Toronto is the best team. I'm only a little bit concerned that Edmonton will make it, and McDavid will just completely, do what he does, and he's the only man out there, and somehow he wins games just by himself. So Toronto's going to have a hard time in Edmonton in the second round, but I'm going to say Toronto is going to take the North. And for the Central, this is a really tough one. I'm going to say Carolina. I feel like I'm just picking the top teams here. Well, Boston isn't top, but Carolina, they're such a good team. They're such a high depth. As long as their goaltending stays as hot the way it has been this season, I think just the way they're built with their defense and offense, it's clearly the best team in the division. And then the final one here, this is a really difficult one. I know I said Vegas. I think they're going to go far, but I really do want to see Colorado actually make the next step this year, and so I'm going to give it to Colorado in the Honda West.
Wow, that's bold takes. So we got Colorado, Carolina, Toronto, and Boston. And so in yours, you would have Boston would play Toronto, and then Carolina, or it'd be Colorado would play Boston, Carolina would play Toronto.
Oh, is that the way they're doing it? So Boston can only play Toronto in the final, hey?
Yeah, it gets reseeded. So first place fourth, second place third.
Oh, so it's not by division necessarily; they just reseed. Gotcha.
Yeah, once they get to the final four, they reseed it based from 1 to 4. So that's definitely an interesting way to do it. I think they should keep that going forward, to be honest. I think it's more interesting for the matchups.
Tough. That makes it a lot harder. I don't know if I can do the quick maths in my head to get the final then after, but
just tell me your 4 and I can tell you who they play.
Okay, well, my 4 right now, I'm going to say Tampa Bay. They're going to rock out the Central. East is going to be the Bruins. and then I'm going to give the Avalanche the West. And in the North, God's team, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, that makes me rational.
Even though I'm predicting them, I'm hoping so badly that they don't win the division. Even though, I'm saying they're going to, but I really hope I'm wrong.
So then how could I seed it so that Colorado's in the final playing someone? Who would they play?
Colorado would play the Bruins, and Toronto would play the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oh, so
Leafs
God's
versus
team's going to
Bruins
the final. So I'm going to say Toronto versus the Avalanche.
Wow. Okay, Connor, your final 4.
My final 4?
My blind.
Colorado's going to be the West.
Colorado. Okay.
Colorado's going to be the West.
I'm going to laugh real
In
hard
the
with Toronto
Central?
in the first round now.
I got to go Florida. Florida's going to win the Central.
Sam Bennett, playoff legend.
Out of the East, we're going to have Sid the Kid and the Penguins representing them. Then up north, Edmonton Oilers. I got Edmonton beating the Leafs. Connor McDavid in the playoffs.
Could happen.
He's going to put in work. This man is
that would be
hungry.
then Colorado would play Edmonton, and then Florida would play Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, you have 3 generational talents there in the final 3. McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby. And you have an amazing other player in Jonathan Huberdeau there. It's going to be nuts. I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Wow.
The Crosby versus McDavid final.
That'd
That's
be
what I'm
pretty
calling
crazy,
it right
actually.
now.
For my final four, I'm gonna have to say Colorado in the West. I know that's kind of what we all said, but if sticking with my guns, if I have Minnesota beat Vegas, then they play Colorado after, and I don't think Minnesota has a chance. Like, it's not even gonna be fair. And then when we go to the Central, it's got to be Carolina. They're good in every aspect of the ice, and I think after the bloodbath that is Florida and Tampa, I don't think they're gonna have a chance against the Roland Canes. And every time the Canes make the playoffs, they always make it to like the third round anyway. So I got to keep a tradition. In the North, I got the Edmonton Oilers going all the way. Same thing. I think McDavid's just going to prove too much for the Leafs. I think he's going to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs at their own game. God's team just won't have a chance against the Oilers.
Well,
And then
they're not going to have to play the Oilers because the Jets are going to beat them in the first round, but whatever.
And in the East Division, it's a sign of the end times because the Washington Capitals are going to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in the second round and go to the Final Four.
Is that right?
God.
I like Washington for my East team.
Could happen.
It's not happening.
So then for my Final Four, it would be Colorado against Edmonton, and then Florida or Carolina against Washington. And now that we know our Final Four, I want to hear your guys' Cup finals and Cup winners to, cap this off. James, who's your Cup finalist and who's going to win the Cup?
Partially doing it for
2021.
the meme that I've kind of discussed this whole episode, but I want to see Boston, Toronto in the final. Boston win Game 7.
After Toronto has a 5-goal lead or something.
The worst ending.
Yeah.
I just
best
think
ending.
that would be so good. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're like a Boston is such a good team. And as I've kind of said before, I think the only unknown for me is kind of Rask. Maybe a little bit on their defense too. But yeah, I'm gonna say, you know what? Even though I don't know 100%, I believe it myself. Boston Cup final. Stanley Cup champs.
Who's your Conn Smythe winner in that?
Marchand?
Brad
That's a good
Marchand.
Yeah.
I think he's a playoff warrior.
He
He's
is.
got the points to prove it.
Him and Bergeron really pick it up.
Jage, who you got for your Cup final and winner?
So I guess I kind of already spoiled my Cup final, but it's going to be Toronto, Colorado. I'm going to say Colorado takes it home. They win in 5, I'm going to say. I'm going to say it's going to be pretty simple for them. Conn Smythe winner, I'm going to go a little bit off the board and say Brendan Saad. I think he's just going to turn it on, be a complete legend on the Colorado team, even if it's more of a depth role. And he's going to win the Conn Smythe, and they're going to win the Stanley Cup.
Brandon Saad, noted Austin Vipers legend.
Yeah, noted NHL 20 or 21.
Yeah.
Austin Vipers, third line legend.
Franchise mode hero, Brandon Saad.
So I believe in him. I believe in him. Bit
Connor, who you got for your final
bit
and Cup
silly,
winner?
but
I kind of also already spoiled it, but I'm going to go Oilers versus Penguins Cup final.
God, I hope not.
And honestly, I think it's going to go 5 games for the Penguins.
Could you imagine the articles
even
if
though-
McDavid wins?
Even though McDavid
don't
will get
wanna live
into the
in this
finals,
universe,
I don't
man.
think he's going to be able to beat Crosby yet, solely because I think Mike Smith is cursed to never win a Stanley Cup.
No, take that back.
I will not take that back.
He's winning.
He will never win. He may carry the team to the playoffs, and he will carry them deep into the playoffs, but he's not going to take them to the Cup. Crosby will make and break Mike Smith, and Crosby will also then win the Conn Smythe. His third.
I'm going a little familiar here. I'm going with a Cup rematch in my final, and that's going to be the Carolina Hurricanes against the Edmonton Oilers. They met back in 2005. Carolina took it with Justin Williams. I think they're going to meet again, and I think, and James, you can turn off your mic just take your headphones off for just like one moment. The Edmonton Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup
No way.
in 6
I
games.
don't think so, man.
And
You're putting
I
so
think
much-
when it comes to the Conn Smythe, it doesn't matter how good anyone else on the team does. McDavid will win it. They're going to give it to him no matter what. There was a couple times when Crosby won the Conn Smythe where I was like, should he have won it? But of course you're going to give it to Crosby. But I'm going to say that the sneaky playoff hero is going to be Mike Smith.
I think you're putting way too much faith in him.
I am not a Mike Smith lover. It is well known. But you cannot deny what he does in the playoffs.
They do not have, and if things do go south for Smith, they do not have a backup to as a consolation like anyone else. Because Koskinen, he let in freaking 4 goals and 4 shots the other day. Man, his ice cold.
Mike Smith is going to be the non-Conn Smythe winner when the Edmonton Oilers win the Stanley Cup.
Oh, absolutely. He's going to get the cup first from McDavid.
I think it's going to go McDavid, cup to Draisaitl, cup to Smith.
I would cry tears of joy if that happened, just for Mike Smith, honestly.
Years ago, when I met Mike Smith at my job, I told him to win the cup and give it to Brian McGran, my favorite player, but I never specified to win it with team, and he's going to fulfill his promise this year.
Hey, Brian, want to come lift the Edmonton Oilers Stanley Cup? No.
So that's who I got. I know it's going to be painful to see Canada's first cup back in Edmonton, but I think that's how it's going to go.
It's not happening.
Well, just in case you didn't know, this podcast was filmed in mostly Calgary. Now you know.
And that leaves me with a question. Who are you going to be more upset about when he lifts the cup, Mike Smith or James Neal?
James Neal, 100%. James Neal. At least Mike did something for the Flames. What did James Neal do other than complain about Mike Smith?
And then James Neal will pass the cup to Chris Russell.
Oh my gosh. Just all these Flames. Shaking my head.
There might be a mass suicide in Calgary if that happens.
Just the pain train.
But I'm just thinking of the 50-50s because, they do the 50-50s and they're eligible for anyone in Alberta, so, anyone in Calgary can buy them. If they make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, like last year in the playoffs, it was up to like 15, 20 mil. If they make it to the finals, it's going to be like $50 million jackpot, like 50-50. Like,
hopefully the 50, the other 50 goes to charity.
If you guys win the 50-50, you still stay to do the podcast.
Dude, we're upgrading, man. We're getting
I'm paying Joe Rogan to take my place.
We all move to LA and buy Joe Rogan's old podcast place with the big American flag.
With the new taxes there? I don't know.
Sure. We moved to Puerto Rico.
There's a reason he left.
The Doghouse Podcast, live from Boise, Idaho.
Oh my god, that'd be nuts.
Hey, it'd be our own private Idaho, as the B-52s once said.